You're driving home late at night. Maybe you just left work. Maybe you're traveling through a state you don't know very well. There's a firearm in your glove box or on your waistband. You tell yourself it's just for protection. Then you see red and blue lights in your rearview mirror. The officer walks up. He asks a simple question. Do you have any weapons in the vehicle? And in that moment, everything changes. Let me ask you something directly. Have you ever carried a firearm without fully understanding whether you legally needed a permit in that state? Be honest. Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me what state you're in and what you think the law says there, because this is one of the most misunderstood areas of gun law in the United States, and the consequences can hit a lot harder than people expect. Stay with me, because some of what I'm about to explain surprises even experienced gun owners. First, you need to understand something critical. Gun laws in America are not uniform. They are a patchwork. What's perfectly legal in one state can be a criminal offense just across the border. In recent years, many states have adopted what's commonly called constitutional carry, meaning adults who are legally allowed to possess a firearm can carry it without a permit. But here's the part people gloss over. Not every state is constitutional carry, and even in those that are, there are still restrictions. Some states allow permitless open carry, but not concealed carry. Others allow permitless concealed carry, but restrict certain locations. Some still require a permit entirely, and even in constitutional carry states, age limits, prohibited locations, and background disqualifications still apply. So what happens if you carry without a required permit? Let's break it down realistically. In states that require a concealed carry permit, carrying a concealed firearm without one is typically a criminal offense. Depending on the state and circumstances, it can be a misdemeanor or a felony. That difference matters more than most people realize. A misdemeanor gun charge can still mean arrest, booking, fingerprints, mugshots, court appearances, fines, probation, and possibly jail time. But a felony? That's a life-altering event. A felony conviction can permanently strip you of your firearm rights under federal law. It can cost you certain jobs. It can limit housing opportunities. It can follow you for decades. Now here's where travelers get into serious trouble. You might legally carry in your home state. Let's say you have a permit from Texas. You drive into a state that does not recognize your permit. You assume you're covered. You're not. Reciprocity agreements between states are specific and sometimes limited. If your permit isn't recognized, you may be treated exactly the same as someone who never had a permit at all. And here's something else that catches people off guard. Federal law under the Firearm Owners Protection Act allows interstate transport of firearms under specific conditions, but that protection applies to transport, not general carry. The firearm must typically be unloaded, locked in a container, inaccessible from the passenger compartment. That is very different from having it on your hip during a traffic stop. Let's talk about how these situations usually unfold. An officer pulls you over. Maybe it's a routine stop. Maybe it's speeding. In some states, you are legally required to inform the officer immediately if you are carrying. In others, you only have to answer if asked. In still others, there's no duty to inform at all. If you fail to comply with your state's requirement, that can be a separate charge. If you admit you're carrying and you don't have a permit where one is required, the officer has probable cause for arrest. The firearm will be seized. You may be handcuffed roadside. Your vehicle may be searched depending on the circumstances. People sometimes think, I'll just explain it was for protection. That explanation rarely changes the legal analysis. The law doesn't ask why you carried without a permit. It asks whether you violated the statute. Now let's talk about something uncomfortable. Even if the charge is just a misdemeanor, the arrest itself can trigger collateral consequences. If you work in a profession requiring licensing, like aviation, healthcare, law enforcement, security, or certain government positions, an arrest involving a firearm can trigger internal investigations. Employers often have policies about weapons violations. You might be cleared in court months later, but the employment damage may already be done. And here's a bigger problem. A gun charge can complicate future self-defense claims. Imagine you're carrying illegally. You're attacked. You defend yourself lawfully under self-defense principles, even if the shooting itself is justified. You may still face charges for unlawful carry. That means you could avoid a homicide conviction, but still be convicted for the permit violation. Prosecutors separate those issues. Let's go deeper into how prosecutors think. They look at intent, criminal history, and context. If you have prior convictions, especially violent or firearm-related ones, carrying without a permit becomes more serious. If you were intoxicated while carrying, that's worse. If the gun was discovered during another alleged crime, the weapons charge may stack on top of additional charges. Stacking charges is common. Carrying without a permit might start as a standalone offense. But if it's tied to drug possession, resisting arrest, or reckless behavior, the case escalates quickly. And here's something people rarely think about: plea deals. In many jurisdictions, first-time offenders might be offered deferred adjudication or probation. That sounds good, and sometimes it is, but you need to understand what you're agreeing to. Some deferred programs still involve admitting facts sufficient for guilt. Some result in permanent records, even without formal conviction. Some can still trigger firearm disabilities under federal law. You cannot assume that because something gets reduced, it's harmless. Let's shift to federal consequences briefly. Under federal law, certain individuals are prohibited from possessing firearms at all. Convicted felons, individuals convicted of certain domestic violence offenses, those under certain restraining orders. If someone in a prohibited category carries a firearm without a permit, the bigger issue is not the permit, it's unlawful possession. That's a federal felony, punishable by significant prison time. Now let's talk about age. In constitutional carry states, the permitless carry age might be 21, even if firearm possession is legal at 18. That means an 18-year-old legally allowed to own a handgun might still commit a crime by carrying it concealed without a permit. Details matter. Another issue is location-based restrictions. Even in permitless states, carrying into prohibited places like schools, federal buildings, post offices, secured airport areas, and certain government facilities is illegal. A permit might allow carry in some restricted places that permitless carry does not. People don't realize that permits sometimes provide broader legal protection than constitutional carry alone. And I want to be very clear about something. Police discretion plays a role. Some officers might issue a citation. Others will make a custodial arrest. Your attitude, cooperation level, and criminal history can influence how the situation unfolds. That doesn't change the law, but it changes your immediate experience. Now think about civil liability again. If you carry illegally and use the firearm in a confrontation, opposing attorneys in civil court will absolutely highlight the fact that you were violating the law at the time. That can influence a jury's perception of you, even if the defensive act itself was justified. Here's another practical reality. Court costs add up. Attorney fees for even a minor gun charge can run into thousands of dollars. Missed work, travel for court appearances, stress, reputation damage, all of that for what many people assume is a small technical violation. Let's address one more misconception. Some people think open carry solves everything. In some states, open carry without a permit is legal while concealed carry is not. But openly carrying can create its own complications. It may draw law enforcement attention. It may alarm others and lead to calls to police. And in certain municipalities or specific locations, even open carry may be restricted. If you're traveling, the smartest move is simple but often ignored. Before crossing state lines, verify 3 things: whether your permit is recognized, whether permitless carry applies to you specifically, and what locations remain off limits. Do not rely on what your friend told you. Do not rely on a social media post from 3 years ago. Laws change, reciprocity agreements change, court rulings change, and here's something I'll say plainly. The right to carry comes with responsibility. If you choose to carry, you are choosing to operate in one of the most legally sensitive areas of American law. Ignorance is not a defense. I didn't know I needed a permit here does not make the charge disappear. I've seen people who thought they were just exercising their rights end up in handcuffs because they assumed the law was the same everywhere. It's not. And once you're in the system, you don't control the pace anymore. Court dates get set, prosecutors make decisions, judges impose conditions. So ask yourself this: is skipping the permit process really worth risking a criminal record? For some people in constitutional carry states, the answer may be that a permit truly isn't required, but even there, many choose to obtain one anyway, because it can simplify interstate travel and clarify legal standing. Carrying a firearm is serious business. The law treats it that way, and if you're going to carry, you owe it to yourself to understand exactly what's required where you stand, not where you assume you stand, because that traffic stop, that random encounter, that one unexpected moment, it's not the time to realize you misunderstood the law.